All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Abby Foster. I'm with the Retail Energy Advancement League, and I welcome you to the first virtual Retail Markets Forum hosted by our organization. My colleague, Karsten Neumeister, is also participating. He's our communications director. Our CEO is actually speaking at a conference today, so he's not able to participate, but you have me. Real prioritizes proactive customer education, and we pursue opportunities to improve markets and offer collaborative solutions to challenges. And so after we attended several of the state and national regulatory conferences, MACRUC, NECPUC, NARUC, we saw that there was a gap in forums and panels and discussions on topics specific to states with retail energy markets. And so our goal with these forums, both virtual and in person, is to facilitate discussions based on issues identified through conversations that we have with you all, or issues that you raise specifically to us, and ideas you share with us to be able to present solutions, either ones that we develop through research or through state-led presentations like this on best practices and sharing what other states are doing around those issues. And so we totally understand that as regulatory agencies, particularly those operating in the consumer affairs division, many of you have limited resources. So it's our hope that by bringing together the different states and staff and your colleagues in other states, this will help broaden the tent for resources at your fingertips and ideas and collaboration around best sharing best practices. And so we understand one of those larger resource commitments is around the complaint resolution and management process in your state. And so understanding that that's a key function of the state commissions to ensure ratepayers and customers are protected and receive the service they deserve, we saw this as an opportunity to talk about how states are handling that process and what resources they make available to customers. Particularly this issue, when we're talking about customers shopping for retail energy, is timely because whenever you shop for any product or service, when is it that you don't look first on Google or a review site to get the information you need to make a good decision? But that's a challenge in this very regulated and kind of docket-driven, buried language type of environment that we're operating in, as rates are often not as easily published, and reviews and proceedings around complaints are not easily at someone's fingertips, and it doesn't really talk to Google or Yelp so that customers have access to that information. So we wanted to pull together states. Some of you have processes that you already have in place. Some of you are further along in that process, to talk about increasing transparency in the complaint management process and to identify ways that you can implement some of these practices within your own state to lead to more informed decision-making for customers, but also a really valuable tool for increasing accountability for market participants. So we'll hear from two state commission staff on their current processes and lessons learned and plans for the future. The first is Stephanie Bolton. She's the Director of Consumer Affairs Division for the Maryland Public Service Commission, and Chris Birch, the Director of Customer Protection Division for the Public Utility Commission of Texas. And while they're leading with their presentation and have something formal to present to you all, we intentionally set these forums up so that they're not the webinars that are just the people who are speaking and no one else can be seen or kind of raise their hand or raise things for discussion. These are set up as meetings so that you have the opportunity to ask questions and engage in the discussion, and that's really the goal. So as the conversation is moving forward and the presenters are going through their slides, feel free to ask questions. There will also be the opportunity and time allotted at the end for a broader discussion and question and answer. Just as a reminder, this was notified to you when you signed on, but this webinar is being recorded, and we will share that following the presentation along with a summary to participants. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Stephanie to start.
Thank you, Abby, both for hosting and for having me. Like Abby said, if anybody wants to jump in with any questions at any point, conversations, talk about how beautiful this picture of the Inner Harbor is, that is completely okay with me. So hi, I am Stephanie Bolton, Director of the Public Service Commission, Consumer Affairs Division in the state of Maryland. And we have been collecting data for quite some time, reporting on data a little more recently since fiscal year 2020, so July 2019. I'm going to show you a little bit about where Maryland's been and where Maryland is going with this. Next slide, please, Abby. Thank you. So a little bit about us, some quick stats. We have been around since 1910, but I'm not going to be talking about data from 1910, as interesting as I think that would be. We deregulated in 1999. I know that there's a handful of people on this call who may want to kind of note a little asterisk with that, but for quick stats purposes, 1999 is about when we deregulated. So utility standard offer service is standard here, but customers have the option of switching to electric or gas supply here with the utilization rate of about 16% for electric, 17% for gas. We have a commission staff of 136. There's 47 work groups, so we're handing those out like candy. If you want one, you can go lead one, have fun with that. We have a total of 5 commissioners. Of those 5, 3, including our chair, are new this year. So that's been making life interesting. I enjoyed this quote here from the Public Utilities Fortnightly publication. About how Maryland punches well above its weight. I like to think of us as small but mighty. Next page, please. So my team, the Consumer Affairs Division, answers customer questions, investigates and resolves service complaints, and we share resources with people externally, people from other states doing the same thing as us, people at other agencies, stakeholders, and we like to be transparent. The pandemic has forced us to be even more transparent than we were originally moving towards. And once we tried some of this stuff, we liked it. So if you want to check out any commission proceedings, we do have a YouTube channel. Our weekly administrative meetings are broadcast at 10 a.m. Eastern. I think everyone who has a YouTube channel is contractually obligated to say, like, and subscribe. At least that's the impression I get from all the videos my kids watch. So Maryland PSC on YouTube, check us out. The process for complaint filing in Maryland is, I think, probably like what you see in most other places, most other states. When somebody has a complaint about their service, they submit it in writing to my team, but only after they've gotten in touch with the company, utility supplier that they have the grievance with. If they can't work that out, well, then they get in touch with us. We have staff at the first level that will investigate the complaint and render a decision. We have staff, well, staff, or 2 really, at the second level that can handle appeals, which we call further reviews. So we take a fresh look at complaints, and if parties still aren't happy, they can appeal to the commission. So that's our process, us in a nutshell. Next slide, please. Thanks, Abby. So to talk about data, I want to talk a little bit about our history. Starting in 2018, things started to change, as they often do when you get a new chairperson. So we were running at about 2,700 consumer complaints, and those numbers are higher than what we see now. And why is that? Because through 2018, at least for 14 years prior to that, we had a unit called the Fast Track Unit. They resolved disputes. Well, that unit and everything that they were doing was largely discontinued at the end of that calendar year. So what makes a complaint a fast track dispute resolution complaint? Those complaints are primarily people who need help negotiating their utility bills down to either something manageable, something where they can come up with a successful payment arrangement, negotiate to get their power turned back on if they pay X, Y, and Z security deposits. So we were playing that role, and that was so much of what this team did that when the new chair came in, he said, we're going to start doing things a little bit differently. So in 2019, my team started. I say my team, I wasn't there quite yet. I didn't come in until November 2020. So some of this is history for me too. But in July 2019, the team updated its processes and we started being really and truly the first level of dispute resolution. We used to be a conduit for information. We would collect information from the complainant, exchange that information with the company, and then make sure the company understood the claimant's position, the claimant understood the company's position, and then we were largely out of it. But that ended under our former chair, Chair Stanek, and we started adjudicating these complaints. And that's more consistent with what the regulations were requesting that we did. So we funneled our manpower accordingly. When we started playing that role more actively, we also started reporting on it more. In December of 2019, we announced the first version of our supplier report card. And we also moved to doing a little bit more proactive enforcement in 2020. And in February of 2020, we announced a new unit within our team, the Compliance and Enforcement Unit. So in March 2020, our team contracted for a new complaint data management system. Actually, that wasn't the most interesting thing that happened in March of 2020. But for timeline purposes, that's what we had going on. But there is also, beyond the fast track dissolution, asterisk, another asterisk that will always be attached to every data set forever in 2020, because those were strange times, and strange times make for strange data. So we started contracting for a new complaint data management system in 2020. What we had before was, I'm not exaggerating when I say it was so old that I was in elementary school when that platform launched. Not joking. So 2022, it takes some time, mostly from the legacy data importing perspective, but we did launch our new cloud-based complaint data management system. And we started utility report cards in July 2022. And at this point, we had about 1,700 complaints coming in annually. So big drop from 2018 when we had about 2,700, 1,000 more complaints coming in. That's not to say we had less work. I don't want to suggest that we're just kind of hanging out now. No, quite the opposite. When we moved in 2019 to start really adjudicating complaints, it was a whole different ballgame. So 2023 comes around. We have utility report cards, supplier report cards. Supplier report cards have changed more recently. I'll show you more about how they changed when our data management system changed. But as 2023 rolls on, we do now have 3 new members of the commission, a brand new chair, Chair Hoover, and 2 new commissioners. And they are wonderful so far. I'm loving the attention that the new Moore administration, got a new governor this year, the Moore administration put into making sure that those selected for our commission were amazing people with deep experience in the industry. I'm excited for where we're going, but buckle up, because we're going somewhere. Change is coming. So I'm going to walk you through our complaint data management system adventures now with all that background. Abby, could I get the next slide? Okay, so the good, the bad, and the ugly. Kind of rocking the cowboy hat on this slide, despite us being Maryland and Chris being Texas. So you'll have to forgive me, but the crowd didn't really go with the good, bad, and the ugly thing. So some things I liked about our new complaint data management system, some things I liked about the experience overall, is the extent to which it improved engagement, team collaboration. It went from a system where I would have to get in touch with an individual teammate to say, do you have that email related to this case? Because it didn't go to a centralized box. It went to one place and one person. And every time you needed follow up on a case, you had to find that person and dig through their inbox to get that information if you needed something that level of specificity. And now it's all here. It's all in one wonderful, convenient location. And with that information, we have the ability to share internally, but also across different divisions within the PSC, with stakeholders, and with the Maryland General Assembly, which has been really exciting. We've been able to put out more reports. I would say better reports, exponentially better reports. I'm going to show you what they used to look like versus what we can do now. I would say that across the board, the reports now are better, but there's at least one component of our old reports that I haven't quite figured out how to incorporate into the new reports, but stay tuned. Hopefully that's going to be coming. So the bad, I would say expectations is more like a neutral, actually. With better access to data, there's some things you can get with a click and send it on over to someone who's made a request. But especially with a new system, not everything is as accessible as we'd like it to be. Not everything is searchable, at least not easily searchable. There are some limiting parameters when we do exports, but a lot of times, unless there's a handful of standard reports, and trust me, there definitely are, but if you want something a little bit out of the box, it takes more time, takes more effort. Whose effort is that going to be? Well, my effort. We have, as you may recall from the quick stats page, a Public Service Commission team of 136. Of those 136 people, guess how many we have on complaint data management? Guess how many people take the information out of our Salesforce cloud-based complaint data management system and create reports? You guessed one, you are correct. I am the person that does all of that. So if ever anybody's wondering, man, what's happening with Maryland's reports? Why is everything taking so long? It's because I'm doing that in like 13 to 20 other things at the same time. So we have the access to this system, and I will sit and talk about the system and how much better it is all day long. But without the staffing to run the system, stuff gets tough. And with technology comes expectations. People want to see all of the wonderful data that you've been able to collect and what you can do with it. Becoming your own tech support. Hey, yeah, that's a thing. That is a thing across the board. And becoming your own tech support with something where if you screw it up, I don't even want to think about the implications of that. I try not to, otherwise I wouldn't sleep at night. But moving on to, okay, expectations is like the gray, and the bad is having to become your own tech support. So the ugly is going to be, got to confess, our user experience and customer facing portal. I want to emphasize that on the data end, everything just runs swimmingly. But if you are a customer and you are trying to make a complaint with us and you are using our portal, you're probably not having a good time. Abby, can we get the next slide? I'm going to show you all what I mean. So this kind of looks like a test page, maybe something, developed in a sandbox and waiting to be given life. Well, this thing is live. It is not pretty, it's wordy. And next slide. There's a lot of limitations. There's a lot of rigmarole you have to go through that is to some degree necessary, but it's more difficult than it needs to be. The user experience is just not hot stuff. But the most challenging thing that we hear about with some regularity is, although we have these kind of breadcrumb-esque pathways for complaints, your path online, when you get to completion, after you see the summary of what you just inputted, and you hit that submit button, you would expect to go to a screen that says something like, well, thank you for submitting your complaint. Here's what you can expect and when you can expect it. But instead, you are sent over to this, this page that I have in the little pop-out. That's our main website, not from the complaint portal. And it looks very little like the portal where you have just spent time. So people get there, they don't get a notice of completion, and people are frustrated because they think they just wasted all that time on a tedious form to have it not submit. It's less than ideal. There's a lot of things about it that are less than ideal, but kind of the point of getting together and talking about this is lessons learned. So I got to share the good stuff. I got to share the less good stuff. Can we go to the next slide? See, so some of the past reports that we've had, they have a lot of data, and that's good. And this is something that I pulled from our website from 2019, starting at the beginning of fiscal year 2019, so July, and running on through each quarter of that fiscal year. It has a lot of good information. This is actually amplified at about like 125, 150%. It's difficult to read. And there is one thing about it that I think is really challenging and not intuitive, and that's the type of complaint area. Like what type of dispute did you have? Was it slamming? Was it related to billing? Was it related to customer service? Was it misrepresentation related? That's here, and the numbers don't match the number of complaints, because for a while we were collecting data and we could have a primary complaint and a secondary complaint, and we just posted the whole thing. Some complaints had multiple categories, some just had one. So it's kind of this not especially telling mix of complaint types that don't correspond to the complaint numbers. And so you would have a company where if everybody who, for whatever reason, complained about that company selected a couple different complaint types, they would look like they have all these crazy complaints against them, when maybe that wasn't exactly the case. So I like having the information there, the primary complaint type, but ultimately moving forward, that's not exactly the direction we went in. So this is the past. This is where we're coming from. Can we go to the next slide, Abby? This is where we are now. The report is bigger. I had to shrink these slides, of course, and I'm using the data to tell a story. I think the data is very important, but on the back end, when we're communicating with people internally, with stakeholders, but especially with the Maryland General Assembly, it's important to be able to pull this information and present it coherently. We take this stuff and we do quarterly reports, we do internal biweekly reports, we do annual reports that get posted on the website. And the General Assembly has started requesting more information regarding consumer protections, regarding door-to-door sales practices, and we are able to use what we have to give them that information more quickly, and also, I like to think anyway, a little bit more coherently, in a way that connects to the big picture, the numbers that we're seeing, the things people are experiencing. So it is not a perfect system. There are still some things that I want to be able to emphasize differently, especially with regard to the primary complaint issues. And I very much want to, in the future, work with a company with expertise in the Salesforce platform that is able to give us something much better, much different in the way of user experience in the customer facing portal. I mean, when we did the RFP for the contractor that was ultimately selected, I wasn't here just yet, but I'm not going to even jump in and say I could have done a much better job, because at that point I was not anything even close to a Salesforce expert. I wasn't quite sure what to look for and what to ask for. So the RFP was written in a way where, somebody who had general knowledge of coding could get in here and get it done. And that's why it works on the back end. But when you're looking for something that's going to be this customer facing, what this is going to be, what people go to your website and use, and it's going to be the thing by which most people from the public will judge you by. It's got to be good. It's got to be intuitive. It shouldn't be frustrating. And I think that we could do a much better job. And if I had known when we were contracting, if I'd been here, theoretically, if I had known then what I know now, there's so many things I would have specified in that RFP to make sure that we got somebody with expertise in this particular platform. This, working for the state, any government, the goal is to find whoever can do it the cheapest, but you really have to expand your definition of what it means to do it, what it means to get the job done. Because if it's functional, but you have to do a bunch of cleanup work on the back end, nobody has the manpower for that. So that's one of the biggest take homes that I picked up after our experience. That's something that I would highly recommend everybody think on if you're looking to put together a complaint data management system with a customer facing portal. So yeah, that's a little bit about Maryland. I'm going to stop talking and let Chris jump in.
I think we can just go ahead and transition right into Chris's. Thanks, Stephanie.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me here. Abby, appreciate the invitation for this. This is always a good way to share information and knowledge and just experiences. A lot of what I can say is going to really tag along on what Stephanie was saying, but let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Chris Birch. I've been with the Texas Public Utility Commission for 18 years now. Been in my current role for 9 years as the director of the Customer Protection Division. Texas is a little bit of a different state as far as the PUC goes. We do not handle gas or oil or anything along those lines. We only handle electric, telecom, and water and sewer services, and that's only on the rate side for water and sewer. But for most of this today, we're going to focus on the electric side. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Abby. So let's talk a little bit about kind of how we do things here in Texas. The Customer Protection Division, we only handle informal complaints, meaning we don't adjudicate anything. We are kind of the intermediaries trying to mediate, trying to get the simple complaints to conclusion as quickly as possible. If a complaint can't make it out of our shop, then the customer has the ability to file a formal complaint, which that's when it gets docketed in front of the actual commissioners itself. So we are just focusing on the informal side of complaints. I'll go into a little more detail here in a minute, but the informal complaint process itself, once the complaint hits our door, either by online complaint form, which we have available, you can do it via snail mail, which we still get a few that way, or you can actually call our intake center and actually speak to one of my staff and actually take a complaint over the phone. If you go back, say 5 or 6 years ago, I'd say 80% of our complaints came in over the phone. Now, I'd say 85% of our complaints come in on our online complaint form. We don't actually get a chance to speak to the customer until we get into the process of handling their complaint. Calendar year 2022, we handled almost 14,000 complaints. We closed a little over 10,000 for that year. We have a success rate of about 98.8%. Meaning that we close the complaints to the resolution either of the customer or the company, and it doesn't go any further than that. That's not saying that the customer was happy, but we applied the rule and the law and everything that we could, and we closed it out as best that we could. Kind of one of the complaints that Abby had given me, how does your information work? That last line there, informal complaints, we don't consider that public information. We don't share the complaint data per se, especially what they're complaining about, at least not on a granular level. We consider that confidential information because a lot of that, the customer's name, address, phone number. Oftentimes they'll send in copies of their bills, which has their account numbers and those things on there. So we try not to share that data with the general public. Now we do give little snippets of it out there, and I'll show you a little bit more as we get a little further into this. Yeah, we don't really have that data out there the way, Stephanie, the way you had described it earlier. If you would, Abby, go to the next one. This is kind of just the basic process of how things get into us. I threw this slide in here. This is one I use when I hire new staff, just so they can get an idea what it looks like when things come in. We've got we have an intake team. There's 10 people on that team right now. I've got a team of investigators, which currently right now is at 8 people, with supervisors over both of those. And both of those teams work together to process the data. Once we get it in the door, they'll code it, they'll scan it, get all the data into our in-house database, where it's the investigator's job then to take that information, open the complaint, send the information to the utility, code out the information so we know we've got it. We've got the correct company identified. We've got the correct person identified. We know the exact reason why what they're complaining about. That way we can kind of keep an eye on what the data looks like. The resolution is pretty simple. We either come to a conclusion where we're able to help the customer and we get the resolution documented and get their complaint closed. Sometimes that can result in a refund back to the customer for whatever their complaint reason was for, or possibly a bill credit or something along those lines. Either way, the customer and the utility both get a copy of the letter that we write in-house to tell them what we came up with. Go ahead, go to the next one. So I want to kind of jump a little bit here to the Power to Choose website, since that seems to be what a lot of people want to talk about these days. Kind of like on what Stephanie was talking about, we went to competition at the result of the 76th legislative session in 1999. That's when they gave us the power to go to competition. We didn't go live on that until January 1st, 2002. It took us that long to get everything in place. The Power to Choose website came online at that same time in 2002. There has been some updates to it over the years. We'll talk about the industry scorecard here in just a little bit. That didn't come online until 2005, so a few years later. But in general, the website, we own and operate it here at the Texas PUC. It's our website. We created it. It's not off the shelf anywhere. It was written in-house. We've made all the updates to it ourselves as well. And we also have that both in English and in Spanish. So if a retail electric provider has a plan out there in English, we require them to have that same plan on the Spanish website. So we go both ways on that. And I have staff that can both speak English and Spanish on both sides of the shop. So we can handle anything that comes through our doors along those lines. The site is free. We don't charge anything for anybody to be out there. We don't mandate anybody to use the site. It is their option. If they want to be there, they can. If they don't want to be there, they don't have to. The website itself is only for consumer side, for retail electric, for the regular customer. It does not go commercial or even small commercial. It's only for the general public. Go ahead and hit the next one. This is what the website looks itself. I did a screenshot and Abby's got a live version of it if we want to go to that, if anybody has any questions on it. There we go. So looking at the website itself right here, this is a 75001. So this is going to be, I believe, up in the Dallas area someplace. I'd have to look. But when we've got the ability to change almost anything on this screen, so we can do, currently we have it defaulted to the 1,000 kilowatt hour price point. Our rules dictate that you have to show pricing points at 500, 1,000, and 2,000. Although some days, some customers think we should go higher than that, especially with the usage this time of year. But that's what we have it defaulted at the moment. But you can kind of see a little bit of the information there. Oh, good, you blew it up. Thank you. So you can see the star rating. That's a direct reflection of the industry scorecard. So this Power Next company is a 1-star rated company. Frontier Utilities is a 2-star. I believe Gexa is, you scroll down a bit, yeah, they're a 3-star. Value Power 4. If you look along the left-hand side there, you can see that you can kind of tailor. You can click 5-star and then hit refresh. And that's only going to show you 5-star rated companies. So if you want to filter out based on the star rating, and a lot of customers use it that way. If you click on the eye there on the history, Yep, right there. That'll show you the number of complaints that that particular company has received over the last 6 months. And some people say, well, how does a 51 complaints rate that kind of a star rating? Unfortunately, the way we currently do our formula, it's the size of the company does matter. So your customer count definitely plays a factor in that. We've looked at multiple ways to try to change it up. I bet I've written 20 or 30 different formulas on how to calculate this to try to level the playing field, but we haven't really put that into play at this point in time. But almost all the information that you need is available right there on that screen. On the whole left-hand side, Abby, click on the one that says show all plans under pricing and billing. Yep, right there, and then refresh. So now we've taken out plans that have got minimum usage fees and credits or anything like that. If it's any kind of a tiered pricing plan, and we're just saying, I want to see everything. And brings up to this kind of a screen where you get a little bit more of a all things inclusive type plans, where you see the top plan there is 12 months, which is typically what most are offering these days. But you'll see things like the Octopus plan there, that's a EV connected plan. I know that particular plan is you have to own an electric vehicle and you have to register your electric vehicle with Octopus Energy to get that rate. And if you don't register your vehicle, when they do a review, and I think they do a review within the first week, you will be defaulted to a different type of a plan if you don't get your vehicle registered, and kind of cause some complaint issues. And I've been talking with them on that particular plan, but that's what they currently have out there. But you can change the price per kilowatt. You can put a high and a low price. You can do contract length. If I want to see 3-month plans or 6-month plans, you can really tailor it down to whatever it is that you want to use. On the right side of any one of those screens, you can see the fact sheet, the terms of service, and your rights as a customer documents. All that's available out there. So this was designed to be a one-stop shopping for a customer, where they can see what the pricing is. They can look at the EFL, the fact sheet, and they can see exactly how things are broken down. They can look at any kind of fees or there are other special terms. We try to make it so nothing is hidden out there. We want to make it as easy as possible for the customer to find the plan that they're looking for. Let me stop right there for a second before I continue on. Does anybody have any questions on that? You guys gonna make this easy on me today.
Oh, well, I don't know about all that.
Hang on, there we go.
Okay, so I know I was participating in this webinar, but I was super excited to hear about how you guys get that star breakdown. I know that, like Maryland, you guys are not allowed to share the actual supplier enrollment numbers, but you have an algorithm that factors in that and complaint totals. Is there anything else you guys think about when formulating these stars?
Abby, take me to the next slide, and I'll go ahead and touch on that.
Nice.
So here we go. I wrote this one up trying to give as much detail as I can without going too deep in the hole myself. So the scorecard is published each month. Of course, we're always a month behind because you got to always look at the last month's data, but it's a 6-month rolling average. And that's based on several things. So one, it's your customer count as your company. And yes, we definitely don't share that information. It's also the number of informal complaints that you've received in that same time period. It's month at a time, but the 6-month rolling average. And then all that is averaged out against the total number of customers within the service territory, which right now I think is we're getting close to 7 million, I think, somewhere on that range. So that kind of is the nutshell on how we look at it. So it's pretty straightforward itself. A lot of companies still don't understand it. I do little workshops with new retail electric providers that have entered the marketplace, or anybody who would like a refresh on how this whole thing works. I typically will reach out to new companies, even if they bought out businesses and they bought out a book of customers. I'll recommend that they stay off our scorecard for probably the first couple of months until they get their feet wet. And if they're not over, say, 10,000 customers for their own customer base, I also recommend them to stay off that power to choose, because if you get one complaint at that small of a customer count, it just murders you, and it's going to stick with you for 6 months. So we have people kind of coming on and off the scorecard on a regular basis, trying to control what that looks like on the scorecard. They take that very seriously.
Chris, on that note, can you share about how, so based on customer count, how you level it out, the methodology behind that?
Yeah, the leveling factor is the overall number of customers. That is actually what levels it all out. It's pretty simple methodology, and I apologize. Abby had asked me earlier on about like a little one pager explaining it. I used to have that available on our webpage, and I'm going to find that and I'll send it to you. I mean, if you want, you can share that with everybody else when I find that again. I haven't had it out there for a while because I did make a couple of changes to it, but it's like I said, it's straightforward. It's just your 6-month numbers on the number of complaints you get and the number of customers you have. That's kind of it. But we divide it out though by the total number of customers, which that's supposed to level the playing field, and it does to some degree. But when you've got a company that say has 1.5 million customers, as opposed to a company that has 10,000, you're not going to be able to level the playing field enough to make that really be meaningful. At least that's kind of how I look at it. There are a number of ways. Go ahead.
Melissa from Ohio, you have a question. Do you want to go ahead and ask it yourself?
Sure. I actually have a couple quick questions. You said that the suppliers can go on and off of the scorecard. That is their option?
Yes. And how they do that is if you are active on Power to Choose on our actual website, you are active on the scorecard. So a company has the ability to come on and off of the Power to Choose website, offering their plans, and say they know they've got a couple of complaints that just came in, and they're going to take a hit, and they're going to be a 1 or 2 star company on the scorecard. They don't want to show that to the public. Well, they can exit the Power to Choose website itself and not post any plans. And when they do that, that takes them off of the scorecard for however long they want to be off of it. Now,
Okay.
the numbers still stack up. They're still there. I do the actual data on every single company that's active. Currently right now, they're about 83.
Okay,
So
but they're not on the scorecard if they're not
active.
posting offers.
Right.
Okay.
That was another way to try to help level the playing field a little bit. People were just like, man, I don't want people to see my numbers. I'm like, okay, well, don't be on Power to Choose for a temporary time period. When you think your customer account has gotten up a little higher, you can withstand 1 or 2 complaints. It's up to them. They could be on there if they want. It's not mandatory.
Okay. And then my other question is, how do you classify a complaint? Is it anytime a customer reaches out, or are there certain categories you use when you're doing the scorecard?
So when a customer, we got a slew of these just the last couple of days. The heat in Texas right now is really causing problems. We've been above 100 now. I think we're coming up on 40 days in a row. And that's really wearing down the system, and it's causing very high usage. So we'll get complaints from customers that come in saying, hey, I'm complaining because my bill is so high. Well, we'll take a look at it to make sure that complaint is legitimate. If it's not legitimate, we will change it from an actual complaint to an inquiry, meaning that that won't affect the scorecard data, only an actual complaint brought in by the customer. So we try to verify who they are, what they're complaining about, and is it something that's actually complaint aboutable? Is that a word? Complaint aboutable? Does that help?
Yes, definitely. That helps. Thank you very much.
So getting back to what, the data itself, I'm very much in the same boat that Stephanie's in. We have got some of the data automated, like the complaint itself, the complaint data. I get that from an internal website one of our IT staff created for me, where I can just plug in the date range I want. It'll go through our complaint database and pluck out all the complaint totals for each company, so I don't have to go through and figure out who did what and when and how. The customer count is filed confidentially every month from ERCOT, the body we have here in Texas that monitors the grid and whatnot. So they file that customer count data, which is definitely proprietary. We don't share that with anybody. But the staff that handles everything, that's me. I'm very much in the same boat that Stephanie's in. I do the scorecard myself. It takes me a full day to do it each time I get the data, and I usually get that around the middle of the month. It's not real difficult. It's just a lot of data points, and I go through and I'll put it in the system, and then I'll go back through and double check all the data to make sure I've got it in there correctly. And then I've got I'll set up like an Excel type spreadsheet. We'll crunch out all the numbers for me. Then I get it ready to go and we get that posted live. So one of the questions I was asked, do customers think that the rating system is valuable? Oh boy, do they ever. I get calls weekly on the scorecard itself. How does this work? How does it operate? How do I know this is good? Give me some more information on it. And as far as the rep side of things go, they are very vigilant in how they handle and how they respond to complaints, because they want to make it go away. They don't like that. Every rep out there, they want to be a 5-star company. I had one call me up on multiple occasions and say, every star rating I dropped from 5, he goes, I did the math. He goes, that can cost me up to $150,000 in sales and business. And I'm like, is that month? Is that year? He's just like, well, that's just the number I came up with. I'm like, okay. So he's like, I need to be a 5-star company. So I'm like, all right, well, let's kind of take a bottom-up approach. Let's look at your complaints. And we'll actually sit down with them. And I do this on a regular basis with every single company that wants to meet with us. Our goal is to make sure they don't have any complaints at all. That would be wonderful. We'll do kind of a root cause analysis to say, hey, how did you get this complaint? What can I help you do to make those not happen again? And we'll actually break these things down and get to the point where some of these companies can get up to be a 3, 4, and 5-star company. I actually had one rep tell me once, like, if it wasn't for the scorecard, I wouldn't even care about complaints. I'm like, really? Okay. That tells me we're doing something right. We're keeping them on their toes. We've talked off and on over the years, is this something we still need to do? We've been in competition since 2001. 22 years later, do we still need these things? I'm like, yes, we do. That one rep telling me that tells me we're doing the right thing. We're trying to keep this as level of a playing field as possible, keep everybody honest, and do what we can to help out customers to make a good quality decision. I think I've already touched on that last one. Currently there's about 33 companies active on the Power to Choose website out of 83 companies. So that tells you just how many don't use the free website, which I find odd. A free marketing tool, you think you'd want to be a part of that, but some of them, I guess they don't. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is what the scorecard looks like. This is what we publish. This is what we put out there each month. Like I said, it's a rolling 6-month average. This particular one is from January 1st through the end of June. We try to give it enough information about the company. We put the date licensed out there because a few customers early on were just like, I want to know how long this company has been in your marketplace. I'm like, okay, we'll start adding that date licensed line in there. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. I used to put a randomizer in there so that each individual bracket, you get the 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, that would kind of scramble them around a little bit. So you want to know which company was actually highest and lowest, but that was too much of a pain on me. So they're actually in order. So that's actually how they rank out. So right now, Branch Energy Holdings, they're a 5-star company because I think during this 6-month average, they have 0 complaints. So that's pretty straightforward how that looks. We post that on the Power to Choose website itself. I also post it out on our PUC webpage. And then I have to manually go in and change the star rating. That's actually one of the other pieces that gets a little frustrating because you have to, each month I have to go in and manually change what their star ratings are. If a company wasn't on last month and I have to add them, that can be a little tedious. That's why that process takes a little bit longer. Any questions on that? Because I think my next slide is my question slide.
We have one question from Tom.
Hi, yes. Chris, thanks. And I appreciate that. And to Stephanie as well. Thanks for taking the time to talk here. So I'm Tom Lopez. I'm work at Connecticut Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. I guess my first question is sort of for both of you, and it just sounded it's more out of curiosity. It sounds like the numbers of customers for suppliers are confidential in your state. It's not in Connecticut, right? I guess. So I'm wondering if there's a statutory or regulatory reason that those, regulation specific reason why those numbers would be confidential in your states. If you don't have the answer, that's fine. That was a curiosity.
I can answer that one for you. So in Texas, the retail electric providers, they very much consider that proprietary information. They don't want it shared. So they lobbied, and I couldn't tell you when it was. I'd have to go back and look in the rules, but they lobbied successfully to make sure that data stayed confidential and not shared to the public. So that's why we don't share a lot of the data information. So another reason why I don't post up my formula for the scorecard. If that data was public, shoot, I'd throw my formula out there, let anybody look at it. It's too easy to reverse the math and figure out, how big a company really is when they keep the lid on that. They're pretty adamant about that one.
Fascinating. Okay. All right. That's just interesting. And I don't know if Stephanie, if in Maryland, if it's a similar reason.
Yeah, in Maryland, we don't have anything in the Maryland code. We don't have anything in the regulations. If there was something that came out, in the early years of deregulation, it would be buried in maybe an old commission order. At this point, when we have cases, as I mentioned, YouTube channel, like and subscribe. When we have cases against suppliers, those are broadcast publicly if they do go to hearing. When they go to hearing, almost inevitably, the customer total does come up. So there are many situations where those numbers do come up publicly, and more recently, they've come up publicly in the Commission's general weekly AM meetings, Wednesdays at 10, because there isn't something specific on the books that prohibits that. Again, anything could change. It's a new commission. So that could be something that we end up looking at going forward.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
So we're getting close to the end of the time. There may be some additional questions, and I would just encourage, I'll send a note around after this with the recording, but if you have questions for the group, feel free to share them with me, and I'll track down some answers from our presenters and or find them. We'll be sending around resources, including the Texas methodology, links to the website, things like that. And then for future webinars and topics, we welcome your feedback. We had included in the survey some options, and actually almost everybody selected all of the options, which is great. And so if you'd like to present on any of those topics, feel free to reach out to me. But thank you to our presenters and everyone that participated. This was, I think, a really good first conversation. In the future, maybe we need to extend these to 90 minutes. And thank you again for being gracious about the technical difficulties that we had. So talk to you all soon and have a great rest of your day.